Hello, this is D, and I'm back with another video. Well, today it's going to be a little bit of a longer video because we have a lot of things to go over from CES 2025. Now, yesterday, AMD had a presentation where they showed new CPUs and GPUs, as well as Nvidia finally unveiling the 4090 and 4080. Now, I did live streams of both events, and you can check the live section of the channel if you want to watch those in its entirety. First, let's start off with the revealing of AMD's new hardware. Now, they went over the CPUs. They also went over a lot of AI stuff for the enterprise. Now, the CPUs were pretty good. They revealed the 9900X3D as well as the 9950X3D. Now, I just didn't see any prices that were presented at this show. It really seemed incomplete because they went into a little bit of details with RDNA 4 and FSR 4 and that it's going to be available later this year. They're saying that these cards are going to be available in the first quarter of this year. So I just don't understand why they didn't actually show the product, show the benchmarks, give us the price, and give us the release date. Now, they even brought Map Booty out. And when Map Booty came out, I know some Xbox fans were thinking that FSR 4 was going to be announced for the Xbox Series S and X, and that was not the case. Right now, FSR is exclusive to the 97 XT. Now, the RDNA 4 architecture has hardware that is dedicated to machine learning AI on there. They have a lot more space dedicated to it. It's just really targeting a lot of machine learning AI. So this is going to be on the RDNA 4 cards. In fact, the only AMD hardware that I know that is capable of doing machine learning AI is obviously the RDNA 4 cards that AMD announced and the PlayStation 5 Pro. Now, the 9070 XT as well as the 9070 are both going to have 16 gigabytes of VRAM. And once again, I would just like to see the performance. Now, a lot of people are thinking that they didn't show the performance because they want to price it accordingly to Nvidia. Now, there have been a lot of reports that the RX 9070 XT was going to be barely faster than a 4070 Ti. Now, we have some official information from AMD, and this is courtesy of Hardware Unboxed. And basically, AMD said this is not the case. Those leaked slides do not demonstrate the power or performance. They were for the pricing purposes. So basically, AMD is not going to have any cards that are over $800. They're going to have nothing that is approaching $8,000, and we have official confirmation from AMD. So what I'm going to do right now is play a little bit of Hardware Unboxes Q&A, or at least the results of the Q&A that they had with AMD. Of course, I'll leave a link in the description down below so you can watch the video in its entirety. So I'll come back after these comments.
But David McAfee in this Q&A specifically said, and I'm quoting him directly here, the performance data that's out there on RDNA 4 completely inaccurate. They also said that board partners at the moment do not have final drivers, so any leaks through AIBs or partners like that would not be accurate. That's pretty typical, but they were pretty equivocal, pretty categorical that the majority of those performance leaks are not accurate. So that gives some pretty big question marks about how RDNA 4 performance will end up, but I thought that was very interesting that they were willing to go on the record to refute those rumors, which you basically never see from companies. The usual response is, we're not talking about performance, we're not talking about future hardware, that sort of thing. So anyway, we'll move on. We'll talk more about value now. So throughout our Q&A session, there was a lot of discussion about AMD bringing value to this generation. I think this is one of the things that people were concerned about when AMD decided to hide RDNA 4 from the presentation. The thought was, oh, this is going to be disappointing, underwhelming. They just want to make it an Nvidia GPU, but slightly cheaper, like they've done through the RDNA 3 generation. But at least what the Frank Azor and David McAfee were saying were things like, we've listened a lot to the RDNA 3 feedback. We understand that the 7900 XT and maybe the 7800 XT and the 7900 GRE were really the only products that got reasonable reception, and they're very focused on reversing that with the next generation models. So in other words, making sure that AMD's GPUs launch out of the gate with a good price that doesn't need to be adjusted within a couple of months after the release. They seem to be hinting pretty strongly that they really want to nail this launch, and again, that's their claim for why they didn't show RDNA 4 at the presentation, but also they're claiming things like they want to make sure that price to performance ratios for this generation are really focused towards the gaming market. They want to make sure that gamers are getting RDNA 4 GPUs in price points where most gamers buy. They were very clear that they're not going to be targeting $1,000 price points or anything close to that. They were talking about price points well below that, very much mainstream, mid-range sort of products, which fits with that performance slide that you would have seen from the first video, where they sort of tried to position the 9070 and 9060 series compared to the competition, kind of topped out in that sort of mid-range price, and that's very much what AMD are targeting here.
So there you have it. We have some official confirmation that the slides that we were seeing in comparison to the 4070 Ti were for the pricing, not the performance. And the reason why they pulled RDNA 4 from the presentation is because they want to price it appropriately to compare it to the offerings from Nvidia. So this is pretty interesting. So I really want to see the performance of these new RDNA 4 GPUs. I want to see how much better the ray tracing is. I want to see how good the machine learning is compared to DLSS, compared to PSSR. And I gotta be honest with you guys, it's the next day now, and I expected to see some information, and I have yet to see the full specifications, the price, or the release date for these RDNA 4 GPUs. So until then, I don't think there's really much more to say. It was kind of a lackluster showing at CES 2025 for the RDNA 4 GPUs. We really didn't get any information out of that event past FSR 4 and Call of Duty being the first game to use it. Matt Booty came out and announced that, and you know, that was pretty much the biggest gaming announcements that we got. We pretty much got most of our information after the show from other outlets letting us know that it has 16 gigabytes of VRAM and all the different partners showing their cards. So until we get further information on this, it is kind of what it is. I am disappointed that they just didn't give us a lot of details. Now, when it comes to the Ryzen 9 chips, the 9950X3D looks really good. It's very competitive. Looks like it's going to have the same type of gaming performance as the 9800X3D. 3D stacked 12 and 16 core variants do look good. I didn't get a price tag, and it's 24 hours. Well, it's not quite 24 hours removed, but we are on the next day, and I still have not seen any prices or release dates for these CPUs. Now, overall, I gotta say it was just a lackluster showing. Sure, the CPUs look great. Their Halo Strix product looks great. 40 CUs on an APU is incredible. I can't wait to see the handhelds that are going to be using this. But overall, we didn't get any release dates or prices, so it is what it is. Now let's move on to some Nvidia news. Now, of course, yesterday Nvidia had their live event at CES 2025, and they unveiled the 5080 and 5090. We also got details on the 5070 and 5070 Ti. They let us know about DLSS 4 and the improvements that it brings over DLSS 3. Now, first, DLSS 4, it is going to be available on old hardware. So it's going to be available on the 2000, the 3000, the 4000 line of GPUs. Now, they did release some slides, and as you can see on the screen here, the new DLSS multi-frame generation is only available on the RTX 50 series cards. Now, what this is doing, so it's predicting the frames, and it's giving you 4 frames ahead, so it's giving you much higher performance. Now, they did have an example of DLSS being off and DLSS 4 being on with full ray tracing, and they use Cyberpunk. And as you can see on the screen right now, you're getting 28 FPS with DLSS off. With DLSS 4 on, you're getting 243 FPS. Now, we have to see how smooth this is in action. We have to see how the latency is. I'm not just going to take their word for it. Like, we are seeing the metric of it, but how does it translate to gameplay? How does it translate when you're playing the actual game? Is it smooth? Are you feeling a lot of latency? All these things have to be factored in. Now, the enhanced DLSS super resolution, what they are doing is they're using a different network. So normally they use the CNN networks. They're going to be using, it's called a transformer network. And basically it's a lot more advanced machine learning. So it calculates a lot better. It can predict things a lot better. It can come up with solutions a lot better. They trained it for this. Now, the examples that they showed us at CES, I have to be honest with you guys, it was mind-blowing, the details that we were seeing. Now, these are tech demos, but I'm going to be fair here. And I will say a lot of the tech demos that we've seen with ray tracing, with path tracing beforehand, we have been seeing these play out in games such as Alan Wake 2, such as Cyberpunk. So I don't want to say that this is not possible. It's all rendered in real time, so it's being done on the hardware. So it's up to the developers and their artistic direction to get these results. What I'm basically saying is that it is capable of some incredible rendering. I really do believe that the 5000 series is going to give you an advantage with some of the rendering with the multi-frame generation if it is smooth and doesn't have a lot of latency. I also got to commend Nvidia here, and it's probably a rare thing, but they are allowing older GPUs to get a lot of these features. So something has to be said on that. Now we have to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the 5070. Now, before I get into that, actually, I want to say that when I was watching the presentation, they started pretty late. And then when they started the presentation, they went maybe about 5 minutes, and then they went to a break for about 10 minutes. Now, in that time, what I think happened is that they changed the prices of these cards because AMD didn't reveal their prices. And I think that might have given Nvidia some pause, and they kind of lowered the prices on some of these cards. Now, the 5070 is going to be priced at $549. The 5070 Ti is $749. The 5080 is priced at $999, and the 5090 is priced at $1,999 US. Now, I don't think they changed the price of the 5090. I think that's what they wanted to ask for it, but I think the 5080 may have came down from $1,200. That's quite possible. The 5070 Ti, perhaps they wanted $850 for it, and the 5070, maybe they wanted $650 for it. Now, by AMD not revealing the prices of their 9070 GPUs, I think this might have caused Nvidia to reduce the prices on some of these GPUs. So if that's the case, that's definitely a win for everybody. But I wonder what you guys think. If you were watching the presentation, you saw the huge delays. Do you think that was due to them trying to change the prices on those slides? Now let's get back to the 5070. Now, like I was saying, they advertised this as having 5090 performance. And I have to say that is a wild claim for a $549 GPU to surpass your Halo product from the last generation. But when you look a little bit closer and you look at the benchmarks that Nvidia listed, then you can see how they came to this number. Now I'm going to pull it up here on the screen. We have the 5090 up here. Now they use 4K max settings, DLSS set to performance. They have it set on the 40 series and the 50 series with frame gen on the 40 series. On the 50 series, I guess frame gen is also running, multi-frame gen is running on the 50 series. A Plague Tale Requiem is only supporting DLSS 3. Now, if we look at a Plague Tale, it's only using DLSS 3. So that means that the 5090 is only using DLSS 3 as well. So I feel here we're getting more of a one-to-one comparison. And as we can see, there is an increase in performance, but if I'm looking at this chart here, it looks to be about 40% greater than the 4090. Now, if I look at Far Cry 6, where it's not using DLSS and we're just judging it by the ray tracing, so the ray tracing cores on the 4090 and 5090, it looks to be like a 30% increase in performance. So this is pure rasterization right here. So generation over generation, we're not really getting a huge improvement to rasterization over architectures. This chart right here kind of says it. Now, we have to see more games being tested, obviously, but just based off of the information that Nvidia is giving us, it's not a huge jump. Now, when it comes to the AI and the ray tracing and machine learning capabilities, and that's when you see more than a 2 times increase in performance. So that is pretty crazy. Now, Cyberpunk 2077 with DLSS and full ray tracing on, you have a huge increase in performance, well over 2 times. The same with Alan Wake 2, the same with Black Myth Wukong. Now, Black Myth Wukong is pretty demanding. Even on a 4090, I had to use performance mode with everything turned to the max to get some good frame rates and smooth gameplay. So it is a very demanding game. Now, according to these charts, you're going to get a huge increase in performance. But once again, they're using DLSS at performance. They are using multi-frame gen. So it's not a apples to apples comparison. And when we roll over to the 5070, you can kind of see the same gains. Now, in pure rasterization, it looks to be like 30% better than the 4070, With DLSS 3 and ray tracing on, it looks to be the same, about 40% better than the 4070. Now, if my maths are correct, that does not bring it at RTX 4090 levels. Now, when you're looking at Cyberpunk here and Alan Wake and Black Myth Wukong, then you can say that because it's getting to above 2 times performance increase over the 4070. But once again, that's with multi-frame gen. So it's not an apples to apples comparison, and I just want these other outlets to get their hands on these GPUs and do some proper benchmarks. Now, I'm not saying that the architecture is bad. It's going to be good. We just need to see the performance. We need to see how the new frame gen works. Now, I know that DLSS is going to resolve better quality because you're able to switch the networks that it's on. So you can use the old CNN models as well as switch over to the new transformer models and get better DLSS representation in your games. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that most gamers are probably going to switch the model over, especially if it looks significantly better like what Nvidia showed us at their event. Now, I've had up on the screen several times the specifications, so that's probably why I didn't really go through it, but I know some of you guys want to know the differences, so we'll just briefly go through it. Now, the 5090 has 21,760 CUDA cores compared to the 5080's 10,752 CUDA cores. The 5070 Ti has 8,960 CUDA cores compared to the 5070's 6,144 CUDA cores. Now, when I'm looking at the specifications here, I gotta be honest, the 5070 Ti at $749 does appear to be the sweet spot. It's not that far off from the 5080. Now, the 5080 and 5090, there is a huge divide, but the 5070 Ti and 5080, they are pretty close. They're both using 16 gigabytes of GDDR7 memory. They both have a 256-bit bus. The memory speed is pretty much the same. The bandwidth isn't that far off, and the power requirements are very close. So I can see a lot of conscious, or I should say budget gamers, going after the 5070 Ti. Now, the 5070, if it can actually match a 4090 in performance, then I would say it's the true winner. But we already know, looking at the benchmarks and seeing how they tested it, it's definitely not anywhere near the same rasterization as a 4090. First, the memory bus is a lot lower. The memory is lower at 12 gigabits compared to 24. The memory bandwidth is much lower, and the power requirement is a lot lower at 250 watts. Now, you can add as many fake frames as you like. It's still not going to match the pure raster performance of a 4090. Now, I could be wrong. I hope to be wrong on this because that would be pretty amazing. But looking at the specifications, I just don't see how in any scenario with pure rasterization that the 5070 can beat the 4090. Now, we finally also have the release dates. The 5070 is coming out sometime in February, same with the 5070 Ti. The 5080 and 5090 are going to be released January 30th. Now, I'm probably gonna grab a 5090, and reluctantly, I'm not happy about it, not because of the performance, but because of the price. It's priced at $2,000. I was hoping that they would match the launch of the 4090, and obviously that is not the case. So some of the leaks or the rumors about the price being high on the 5090 were indeed correct. Now, in Canada, that's gonna translate to like 2,700 Canadian dollars, and that is before taxes. After taxes, we're looking at $3,000. So I'm just not ecstatic about paying $3,000 for this GPU. And then I think about all the people that laugh at consoles. They laugh at the PlayStation 5 Pro being priced at $700 for the performance that you're getting. That is a bargain. If you want the best on PC, you're definitely going to have to pay for it. Now, my upgrade is going to be 3,000 Canadian dollars. Let's just do it in USD. So 2,000 USD dollars for the GPU. I'm going to get a 9950X 3D. That's going to run me probably another $1,000. I'm already at $3,000 upgrading 2 parts of my PC. Someone that's building from scratch and they want the same components, they want a 5090, they want the top of the line AMD Ryzen 9 CPU, you're looking at $5,000 to build your rig. So that's why consoles will never go anywhere. They will always offer great value for the performance that they give. And I really do think, especially the PlayStation 5 Pro, in light of the price of the 5090, I think it is offering fantastic performance. Now, is the PlayStation 5 Pro going to compete with the top of the line PC? Of course not. But if it could compete with the mid-range PCs for a price point at $700, I think that's a pretty big deal. Anyways, I want to know what you guys think about all this. What are your thoughts on AMD's CPUs? What are your thoughts on the RDNA 4 GPUs not even being shown at the event? We don't have a release date. We don't have prices. Do you think this is because AMD is worried about the performance, or because, like they said, they want to price it correctly and compete with Nvidia? What are your thoughts on the 5090's price at $2,000? Are you going to get that, or do you prefer to get the 5080 at $1,000? Do you believe Nvidia's claims that a 5070 can deliver the same performance as an RTX 4090? Let me know all of this in the comment section down below. And later this week, we're probably going to have some more CES news. We're going to have a couple of live streams from some of the events. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, and like I usually say, I'll see you guys on the next one.